The 22nd of May, 1992, River Forest, Illinois. Tony Accardo died peacefully in his suburban Chicago mansion at age 86. No handcuffs, no prison walls, no bullets. The man who ruled the Chicago outfit for over 40 years slipped away surrounded by family in a home with 2 bowling lanes, an indoor pool, and a pipe organ. FBI records show he spent exactly 1 night in jail during his entire criminal career. 1 night. In 8 decades of organized crime, this wasn't luck. This was something far more calculated. Federal prosecutors and FBI agents spent decades trying to bring Accardo down. They watched him transform the Chicago outfit from Al Capone's violent street gang into America's most sophisticated criminal enterprise. While other mob bosses grabbed headlines and drew heat from law enforcement, Accardo built an empire in the shadows. His organization controlled politicians from city aldermen to governors. They owned casinos in Las Vegas and skimmed hundreds of millions in untaxed cash. Labor unions and legitimate businesses across the Midwest fell under their control. For 50 years, the Chicago outfit didn't just operate in the city, they owned it. This is the story of how one crime family took control of an entire American city and got away with it for half a century. From bloody prohibition wars to billion-dollar Las Vegas operations, from corrupt aldermen who ruled like kings to political fixers who could make federal charges disappear. This is how the Chicago outfit built the blueprint that every other crime family tried to copy. But here's what most documentaries don't tell you. FBI surveillance and court testimony would later reveal the outfit's real power didn't come from violence or even money. It came from something far more insidious. They understood that in Chicago, political power and criminal power were 2 sides of the same coin, and they mastered both. You have to understand something about Chicago in the early 1900s. The city was wide open. Immigrants poured in from Italy, Ireland, Poland, and dozens of other countries, all crammed into ethnic neighborhoods with their own rules. Street gangs controlled blocks. Saloons operated as centers of power. Local politicians ran operations that made organized crime look almost legitimate by comparison. Big Jim Colosimo was the first to really capitalize on this chaos. Born in Italy and raised in Chicago's brutal First Ward, Colosimo started as a street sweeper and worked his way up through the democratic political machine. By 1910, he owned Colosimo's Cafe at 2126 South Wabash, a restaurant and nightclub that became the center of Chicago's underworld. But the restaurant was just the front. Colosimo controlled over 200 brothels across the city, operated illegal gambling dens, and extorted business owners through Black Hand schemes imported from Sicily. The Black Hand was simple and terrifying. Criminals would send letters stamped with a black handprint demanding payment. If you didn't pay, your business burned down, or worse. Between 1890 and 1920, thousands of Chicago business owners received these threats. Many paid. Those who didn't often disappeared. In 1909, Colosimo himself received Black Hand threats, so he brought in muscle from New York. His nephew, Johnny Torrio. This decision would reshape American organized crime forever. Torrio arrived in Chicago between 1890 and 1920, already experienced in the rackets. He immediately recognized what Colosimo couldn't see. An opportunity that would make brothels and gambling look like pocket change. Prohibition. On the 17th of January 1920, the Volstead Act took effect nationwide. Alcohol was now illegal, and Americans wanted to drink more than ever. Torrio saw dollar signs. Colosimo saw problems. Torrio repeatedly urged Colosimo to expand into bootlegging. Colosimo refused. He was making plenty from his existing operations and didn't want the heat that came with violating federal law. He also made another decision that angered Torrio. He divorced Torrio's aunt to marry a teenage singer. On the 11th of May, 1920, James Colosimo was shot in the back of the head inside his own restaurant. Police never officially identified the killer, but FBI investigators and historians believe Torrio ordered the hit, possibly carried out by a young enforcer Torrio had recently brought to Chicago from New York, Alphonse Capone. Al Capone arrived in Chicago around 1919 at age 20. He'd left Brooklyn after violence there made it too hot. Torrio gave him a job as a doorman at the Four Deuces Club. But Capone was smart, ruthless, and ambitious. Within 5 years, he'd become Torrio's right-hand man. With Colosimo dead, Torrio took over the organization and immediately plunged into bootlegging. He didn't just sell illegal alcohol, he created a distribution system. He bought police and politicians. He established relationships with other ethnic gangs, the Irish, the Jews, the Poles. Everyone got a piece. Everyone made money. And for a while, it worked. But you have to understand the geography. Chicago wasn't controlled by one gang. It was carved up into territories. The north side was dominated by Dean O'Banion's Irish gang. The south side belonged to Torrio and Capone's operation, which would become known as the Chicago Outfit. And dozens of smaller gangs controlled ethnic neighborhoods across the city. The peace couldn't last. In 1924, O'Banion scammed Torrio out of $500,000 in a brewery deal. Torrio retaliated. On the 10th of November, 1924, O'Banion was murdered in his flower shop on North State Street, shot 6 times at close range. This triggered what historians call the Beer Wars. For 5 years, Chicago's streets became a battlefield. Tommy guns rattled in broad daylight. Car bombs exploded outside speakeasies. Gangsters, cops, politicians, and bystanders died by the hundreds. It was all-out urban warfare. In January 1925, assassins ambushed Torrio outside his apartment on South Clyde Avenue. They shot him multiple times. He survived, barely. But the experience broke him. On the 11th of February 1925, Torrio handed control of the Chicago outfit to Al Capone and retired to Brooklyn. He was 43 years old and walked away alive, a rare outcome for Chicago mob bosses. At age 26, Capone now controlled the most powerful criminal organization in America. And unlike Torrio, Capone wasn't interested in staying in the shadows. He courted publicity, wore custom suits, smoked expensive cigars, attended baseball games where crowds would stand and applaud him. Why? Because Capone understood public relations. This was the Great Depression. Businesses were failing. Banks were collapsing. The government offered almost nothing to help struggling families. But Capone opened soup kitchens that fed thousands of Chicagoans daily. He sponsored charities. He positioned himself as a businessman who gave people what they wanted: alcohol, entertainment, jobs. The fact that it was all illegal didn't matter to people trying to survive. But Capone also understood that real power in Chicago came from owning the politicians, and the outfit mastered political corruption through an institution that would define Chicago for the next 50 years. The First Ward political machine. The First Ward covered downtown Chicago, the red light district called the Levee, and the city's financial heart. 2 aldermen controlled it like personal kingdoms. Bathhouse John Coughlin and Hinky Dink Mike Kenner, known as the Lords of the Levee, ran what was essentially a protection racket disguised as governance. Here's how it worked. Brothels, gambling dens, and saloons paid the aldermen for licenses and protection. The aldermen used that money to buy votes, hire precinct captains, and control who got city contracts. Those contractors kicked money back to the aldermen and the outfit. Police captains who wanted promotions paid bribes. Business owners who wanted permits paid fees. It was corruption as a business model. Bathhouse John famously boasted about turning down a $150,000 bribe, saying he preferred smaller amounts. The Chicago Daily News quoted him, "There's little risk, and in the long run, it pays a damned sight more. The outfit controlled these aldermen, and through them, controlled the city. Court testimony from later RICO trials revealed that no major city contract got approved without mob permission. No police captain got promoted without mob approval. No judge got elected without mob support. Chicago wasn't just influenced by the outfit. Large parts of city government essentially worked for them. This political protection allowed Capone's bootlegging empire to flourish. Harvard Business School case studies estimate that by the late 1920s, the outfit controlled approximately 10,000 speakeasies and generated revenue equivalent to $1.5 billion today's money. They literally could not spend money fast enough, which is why Capone opened those soup kitchens. It was money laundering, disguised as charity. But Capone made one critical mistake. He got too visible, too famous, too arrogant, and on the 14th of February 1929, that arrogance manifested in the Street Valentine's Day massacre. 7 men associated with the rival North Side gang waited in a garage at 2122 North Clark Street. 4 men dressed as police officers entered, lined the 7 victims against a wall, and opened fire. Witnesses heard the gunshots. The victims were shot over 70 times. Some were finished off with shotgun blasts. The entire execution took less than 2 minutes. The massacre was generally attributed to Capone's organization, though Capone was in Florida at the time, establishing his alibi. But the public was horrified. The newspapers screamed for action, and the federal government finally intervened. They couldn't get Capone for murder. Witnesses were too scared. Evidence disappeared. So federal prosecutors went after what they could prove: taxes. On the 17th of October 1931, Al Capone was convicted of income tax evasion. On November 24, he was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, fined $50,000, and ordered to pay $215,000 in back taxes plus interest. The most powerful gangster in America was taken down by accountants. But here's the crucial part that most people miss. The outfit didn't collapse when Capone went to prison. It evolved. It got smarter. It learned the lesson that would define it for the next 60 years. Don't be famous. Don't draw attention. Work in the shadows and let politicians take the credit while you take the money. Frank Nitti officially became boss in 1932. But FBI surveillance and later testimony from informants revealed that the real power behind the scenes was Paul the Waiter Ricca, Capone's underboss. Ricca had emigrated from Naples in 1919 after serving time for murder in Italy. He got his nickname from working as a waiter in a Chicago restaurant before joining Capone's organization. FBI agent William Romer would later testify before the U.S. Senate in 1983 that Ricca was considered the brains behind the outfit's operations. He was strategic, patient, and ruthless, and in 1943, he faced his biggest test: the Hollywood extortion scandal. FBI investigators discovered that the outfit had taken control of Hollywood labor unions and was extorting millions from movie studios through strike threats. Several top outfit leaders, including Ricca and Nitti, were indicted. Ricca wanted Nitti to take the fall and do the prison time, but Nitti had served 18 months in jail, 1930s, for tax evasion, and developed severe claustrophobia. On the 19th of March, 1943, Frank Nitti walked to a railroad yard on Cermak Road and shot himself in the head. He was 57 years old. Ricca went to trial and in 1943 was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. But through what FBI investigators called the magic of political connections, Ricca and his co-defendants were released after serving only 3 years. The fixer who made this happen was Murray the Camel Humphreys, an outfit member who specialized in bribing judges and politicians. When Ricca was released in 1947, he couldn't officially associate with mobsters as a condition of his parole. so he named Tony Accardo as boss and became the senior advisor who actually made the decisions. This partnership would run the Chicago outfit for the next 30 years. Tony Accardo was born Antonino Leonardo Accardo on the 28th of April, 1906, the son of Sicilian immigrants who settled in Chicago's Near West Side. He joined street gangs as a youth, and by the 1920s, was working as a bodyguard and enforcer for Capone. He allegedly earned his nickname Joe Batters in a possibly apocryphal story about beating 3 traitors to death with a baseball bat on Capone's orders. True or not, the nickname stuck and reflected his reputation for violence. Later, he'd earn another nickname, Big Tuna, for catching a large tuna during a fishing trip. But Accardo was far more than muscle. He was brilliant at organization. He understood how to insulate the outfit from prosecution. And most importantly, he grasped that the future of organized crime wasn't street-level violence. It was legitimate businesses, political control, and geographic expansion. Under Accardo and Ricca's leadership from 1947 to 1972, the outfit transformed. They phased out some traditional rackets like labor racketeering and street-level extortion that drew too much heat. They converted the brothel business into call girl services, which were harder to prosecute. They moved aggressively into new territories. The outfit placed slot machines in gas stations, restaurants, and bars throughout their territory, which now extended far beyond Chicago. They expanded into counterfeiting cigarette and liquor tax stamps. They grew their loan sharking operations. And most lucratively, they took control of Las Vegas. Las Vegas in 1940s and 1950s was wide-open territory. Howard Hughes and other legitimate businessmen owned some casinos, but organized crime families from across the country saw opportunity. The Chicago outfit emerged as the dominant force. Here's how they did it. The outfit gained control of the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund. This was a multi-billion-dollar fund that provided pensions for truck drivers across the Midwest. But the fund's trustees were corrupt. They made loans to whoever the mob told them to, regardless of creditworthiness. In the early 1972s, the outfit used Teamsters loans to back a San Diego real estate developer named Alan Glick. Glick bought the Hacienda Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip in 1974, then the Fremont downtown, then the Stardust. Glick received approximately $100 million in Teamsters loans, but Glick was just the front man. Court records and witness testimony would later prove the outfit actually controlled these casinos through a massive skimming operation. Here's how it worked. Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal was a Chicago bookmaker and oddsmaker with deep ties to outfit boss Joseph Ayupa. In 1968, Rosenthal moved to Las Vegas, and by the mid-1970s was earning about $250,000 annually as executive consultant to Alan Glick, even though Nevada gaming authorities had denied him a license. 1983 Kansas City trial exposed Rosenthal's role supervising a sophisticated skimming scheme. Casino employees would undercount slot machine coins using rigged weighing machines. They would skim cash from counting rooms before it could be recorded for tax purposes. The stolen money was placed in brown paper bags and delivered to couriers. FBI agent Emmett Michaels broke the case in May 1981. Agents placed Stardust employee Bobby Stella under surveillance. They followed Stella to a hardware store parking lot on Maryland Parkway, where he met Phil Ponto, identified as a made member of the Chicago outfit. The exchange of the paper bag containing skimmed cash was witnessed by agents. Cleveland mob witness Angelo Leonardo testified in 1985 that the Chicago, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland crime families each received between $40,000 and $100,000 monthly from the Stardust skim. That's approximately $400,000 per month in untaxed cash to the Chicago outfit alone. Carl Thomas, who orchestrated the skimming operation, testified to these amounts in federal court. Over the life of the operation, federal prosecutors estimated between $7 million to $15 million was skimmed from the Stardust alone. Across all 4 Argent casinos, the total could have exceeded $50 million. All of it untaxed, all of it distributed to mob families across the Midwest. The outfit's man on the ground in Vegas was Tony "the Ant" Spilotro. Spilotro moved to Las Vegas in 1971 to protect the outfit's interests and oversee Rosenthal. But Spilotro became a liability. He ran his own burglary crew called the Hole in the Wall Gang. He allegedly had an affair with Rosenthal's wife, and he drew constant attention from law enforcement. On the 14th of June, 1986, Tony and his brother Michael Spilotro were summoned to a meeting in Bensonville, Illinois. They believed Tony would be promoted to capo and Michael would become a made member. Instead, mob informant Nicholas Calabrese would later testify they were beaten to death in a basement and buried in an Indiana cornfield. Their murders were ordered by outfit boss Joseph Ayupa, Calabrese testified, because Spilotro had become too visible and was threatening the Vegas operations that generated millions for the outfit. But by then, the FBI's Operation Strawman was closing in. In 1983, a federal grand jury indicted 15 people in a conspiracy to skim at least $1.6 million from the Stardust and Fremont casinos. Those indicted included Joseph Ayupa, head of the Chicago outfit, Carl Savella, Kansas City Mafia chief, and Frank Balistrieri, Milwaukee syndicate boss. The trial revealed the full scope of the operation. Evidence and testimony showed the outfit controlled not just casinos, but unions, politicians, judges, and police across multiple states. It was the blueprint they'd perfected in Chicago, now operating on a national scale. Back in Chicago, the outfit's political control remained ironclad through the First Ward organization. In the 1960s through 1980s, a man named Pat Marcy ran the First Ward as the outfit's political fixer. Born Pasqualino Marciano in 1913, Marcy's official title was Secretary of the First Ward. But FBI agent William Rumer testified before Congress in 1983 that Marcy was believed to be a made member of the outfit who controlled everything from the governor down. Marcy regularly met with outfit enforcers at Counselor's Row restaurant across from City Hall. FBI agents illegally bugged the First Ward headquarters at 100 North LaSalle Street in 1962. The bug, codenamed Shade, revealed massive corruption. Judges were bribed, cases were fixed, elections were rigged, but nothing could be used in court because the surveillance was illegal. Finally, in the mid-1980s, criminal defense attorney Robert Cooley, who had been a First Ward associate, secretly approached federal prosecutors. Cooley wore a wire while meeting with Marcy and other First Ward members, including Alderman Fred Roty. The recordings captured Marcy fixing trials, bribing judges, and orchestrating corruption across Chicago's political system. The evidence from Cooley's wire and the Stardust investigation led to a wave of prosecutions in the late 1980s and early 1990s. In 1986, Joseph Ayupa and Jackie Cerrone were convicted and sentenced to prison for skimming. In the 1990s, multiple First Ward aldermen and associates were indicted. But Tony Accardo never faced charges. He died on the 22nd of May 1992 at age 86, having spent nearly 70 years in organized crime and only one night in jail. His survival came from his low profile, his intelligence, and his understanding that real power works behind the scenes. The Chicago outfit continued operating after Accardo's death, but at a significantly reduced level. The political machine that protected them for decades was broken. The Vegas skimming operations were shut down. Federal RICO statutes gave prosecutors powerful new tools to dismantle mob hierarchies. Yet the outfit still exists today, though greatly weakened. They've moved into less visible operations like illegal video gaming and loan sharking. They avoid the kinds of violence and corruption that destroyed their predecessors. So what made the Chicago outfit different? It was their understanding that in Chicago, crime and politics weren't separate spheres. They were the same ecosystem. The outfit didn't fight the political system. They became it. They controlled aldermen who drew their own ward boundaries to guarantee re-election. Between 1972 and 1999, 26 current or former Chicago aldermen were convicted for corruption. That's not counting the ones who were never caught. The aldermanic prerogative system created 50 mini-dictatorships where aldermen controlled zoning, licenses, permits, contracts, and jobs in their wards with virtually no oversight. Perfect conditions for corruption. This institutional design allowed the outfit to operate not as outsiders, but as insiders. At their peak in the 1950s and 1960s, the outfit controlled significant portions of Chicago's government, police force, judiciary, and business community. They didn't take over the city. They became part of how the city functioned. And that's the real lesson of the Chicago outfit. Successful criminal organizations don't fight institutions. They infiltrate them. They don't oppose the law. They buy the lawmakers. They don't avoid politics. They master it. For 50 years, the Chicago outfit proved that in the right conditions, organized crime and organized government could merge into something far more powerful and far more dangerous than either one alone. They built an empire not through violence, though they used plenty of that, but through corruption so deep and systemic it became indistinguishable from how Chicago actually operated. Today, the outfit is a shadow of its former power. Federal prosecutions, RICO statutes, and reforms to Chicago's political system have broken much of their control. But their legacy remains. A 2019 study by the University of Illinois Institute for Corruption Studies found Chicago still ranks among the most corrupt cities in America. Old habits die hard. Tony Accardo understood something fundamental about power. It's not about being the toughest guy in the room. It's about being the smartest. It's about building systems that protect you. It's about working in the shadows while others take the spotlight and the heat. That's how you rule for 40 years and die peacefully in your mansion. That's how you take over an entire city and get away with it. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob documentary every week. Drop a comment. Which Chicago outfit figure should we cover next? Tony Spilotro? Paul Ricker? Sam Giancana? Let us know below.